Welcome back. Yes, recently there was a driver going down a tunnel. The driver was just minding their own business when they heard a siren. And according to their story, they thought the siren was the typical siren that you hear in a tunnel to either discourage speeding or to discourage dozing off. However, this siren was a bit different because it was connected to a vehicle. And that vehicle was trying to get by, but the original driver did not know this, and so they just kept driving normally. Well, fast forward a few seconds, the ambulance passes them, and while they're passing them, they decide to flip them the bird and kind of give them a piece of their mind of why they were a little bit upset that they didn't pull over. The driver was a bit confused, but more than the driver, the online response was a bit critical of the ambulance driver and of the sirens themselves. A lot of people these days are kind of complaining about the sirens. There happens to be maybe a lot of pent-up tension about these sirens, because there's sirens for ambulances, of course, for police, of course, but then there's sirens in the tunnels, and there's sirens for the construction vehicle or the service vehicles. So all these noises are happening. How do you know what's a true emergency and what is something that you can ignore in general? So yeah, that's kind of the up-to-date story of this situation. Don't know if the driver of the ambulance will get in trouble or not. I doubt it. And I don't know if the siren situation will change or not in Korea either.
Yes, it's an interesting story. I'm torn. Do I believe the guy? Was it just an excuse? Or was he genuinely confused by the sirens?
Yeah, I could believe his story pretty easily. I think when you get used to sounds, you just stop realizing that they exist. And so I would even venture a guess that he didn't even think twice about the ambulance siren. He just ignored it because that's just a siren. And so when the ambulance passed, he was like, oh, I must have thought. But of course, driving a bit more conscientiously, that would be a good thing to do for everybody. Don't doze off. Listen for sirens.
But I can really kind of understand the ambulance driver that, he had a completely different take on this. He's in an emergency situation. There's a lot at stake here, and he is just so frustrated that he can't get past this apparently ignorant car. And then he just loses his cool for a moment and vents his anger.
Yeah. I understand both sides. And I don't think the real issue here is either driver, but maybe some of the systems that are in place for ambulances and drivers in general. Could be. Things could change. But to really shift to another gear here, when you have traveled overseas, kind of like this person might have been shocked of the bird being flipped to him, or might have been shocked that these sirens are everywhere. Have you ever been shocked by the behaviors of local people?
Yeah, there have been a couple of crazy ones.
Well, living in Russia, I'm sure there's more than a couple.
Goodness. As this is about driving, Russian driving style is quite aggressive. The driving on the pavement as an acceptable way of passing other cars was quite shocking, genuinely shocking, how often that happens.
And how, is it illegal or is it just,
it's illegal.
Okay, but it's not punished, I suppose.
Not really. They do have quite annoying traffic police in Russia, but they're there to collect their bribes, really. So no matter what you do, maybe you've done nothing, in fact, but you'll still have to pay them.
That could be a culture shock as well.
That was also.
Would you ever want to be an ambulance driver? What would be the pros and cons of being a driver? And what would attract you or maybe repel you from this?
You're right. I do have a pretty clear answer in my head. I would love to save lives. That sounds amazing. I want to be the hero. But the massive con, I think, is you have to deal with a lot of blood and accidents and very traumatic scenes, if you're showing up to all kinds of emergency situations. And I have almost fainted at the sight of a lot of blood on a number of occasions. So I'm 100% sure I actually couldn't do this job.
The fact that you said a number of occasions fainted at the amount of blood. Okay, and this was not your blood, or
No, it was the time I saw the most blood. It was my own blood, and it was after a surgery. It wasn't during an accident.
Oh, good.
It was after surgery, but it was just really, really shocking. And I was like, oh God, I have to sit down. I went all white, and I was like, I'm going to faint. I didn't. But,
Good. Yeah, that's a. I almost fainted because of blood, but that was because I forgot to eat before donation.
I see.
But it wasn't the sight of blood that hit me, it was the lack of energy.
Lack of blood. They were taking it out.
My body was like, oh, you didn't eat and now your blood is gone, so why don't we just die?
I see.
Yeah, anyways. Yeah, I would not want to be an ambulance driver either. I think the stress levels, or EMT. I think EMT was a job I wanted to do when I was younger. And as I got older, the pain and suffering that you can see, and I started to feel it more. Let's go ahead and take a look at the vocabulary, and then you guys can also ponder the answers to the questions that were asked today. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Conscientious.
Conscientious.
Pent up.
Pent up.
Doze off.
Doze off.
Flip somebody the bird.
Flip somebody the bird.
At stake.
At stake.